What's up, everybody? I am HoopsandHipHop, and welcome back to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. I hope you all are staying safe. Hope you all are managing with what's going on. Obviously, we've been in this whole situation for a while now, and hopefully people are getting used to it out there, starting to get somewhat acclimated, and obviously, hopefully it figures itself out soon and we can get back to normal. But with that being said, I am still here to try and entertain you guys and try and give you something interesting to occupy your time with. And we've actually got a pretty interesting topic today, as we usually do, obviously, but it's, I would say, even more particularly interesting because it has to do with something that came to light earlier this week, has to do with cut content, which I am very, very keen on if you watch my actual YouTube channel. And so, yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. We were going to talk about Pokemon Twilight Wings today. I mentioned that in last week's episode because it was supposed to come out today, but for some reason they delayed the English version of the episode to the 21st, which is Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, I believe. And the Japanese version still came out, but I don't want to watch the Japanese version because I don't speak Japanese. And I have no idea if it's like subbed or not. I doubt it because it's on YouTube. And even if it was subbed, I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to make a strong statement about my opinion on this subject. But I hate subbed anime. I hate it so much because I don't think it's like everyone says subbed anime is better. No, it's not. It's absolutely not, because it is impossible to get like invested in the show when you're just staring at the bottom of the screen reading words the whole time. You're not even watching the show at that point. You might as well be reading the manga because you're just reading the whole time. And on top of that, when you can't actually natively understand what they're saying, you can't get what's the word? Invested. You can't get immersed. You can't get immersed into the friggin' world of the show and what's going on when you're having to use your brain power to translate stuff. Not to mention just you're looking at words the whole time, like I said. So yeah, that's a strong take. I know everyone's like, subbed anime is better. No, it's not. It is absolutely not better. People do not give dubbed anime in terms of the voice actors, the music, everything that's like kind of translated for English North American audiences. People don't give those anime the credit they deserve. I mean, some probably could be bad, but by and large, based on what I've experienced, it's dang good and it's a way better experience for an English speaker than the subbed anime. So that's my opinion on that. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Completely unrelated, but I just had to put it out there because the opportunity showed itself off. But with that being said, now that we're ready to start, I do need to give a shout out to our sponsors before we get into it because they allow us to do what we do here every week and we appreciate them so much. So with that being said, today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Tax season is here and it is still here. We're going to get into that in a minute, and that means it's time to file. Instead of going through the hassle of walking into an H&R Block, you can call the tax experts at the Tax Defense Group. They can handle your tax filing anywhere. Also, for a limited time, if you're a W-2 employee, you can save half off of your filing. All you have to do is call the Tax Defense Group, which was it was originally before April 15th, but they did extend the tax deadline to July 15th because of what's going on. So I can't speak on behalf of these people, but I imagine they will also extend their offer. So be sure to give them a call if you still need help, and mention that you heard this ad on UCast Studios. So call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. There are millions of good paying jobs out there, and what might be holding you back from getting one of them is having an up-to-date, well-written resume. Writer Junkie, and there goes a plane. Writer Junkie offers a resume writing service for the low cost of $145, and with only a 3-day turnaround, you cannot beat that price and delivery time. So call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Mention that you heard this ad on UCast Studios, and they will get right to work. Don't know if you guys could have heard that plane outside, but it was like loud. It sounded like it farted in the sky or something. So hopefully that didn't come through too cleanly in the mic. But yeah, so whole situation, cut content, what am I talking about? Well, earlier this week, there was supposedly, and this is largely coming from Twitter user PokeTuber Dr. Lava, who, if you are on Twitter at all, you probably know him as he's basically like a big Pokemon historian, preservationist, cut content specialist, that type of thing. He came on and said that there was some Pokemon Yellow source code that was leaked. I believe it was on Reddit, but basically just leaked online, and he vouched for it as almost certainly legit. And in that source code, there was evidence to suggest that there was actually going to be a Pokemon Pink version that came out alongside Pokemon Yellow version, which is pretty crazy. First off, I do want to say that this is sort of an evolving situation because this just happened earlier this week, and I hope to make a video about it on my own channel at some point, but for now, I just wanted to talk about what we know and my thoughts on it and stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing. So, I mean, keep an eye on my channel. I probably will go into it in like more detail or just take a different look at it or something like that as time goes on when we learn more about this. But basically, the source code leaked, as I said, and within it there were the mentions of Pokemon Pink alongside Pokemon Yellow, as if they were going to be companion releases to one another. And there were multiple mentions of this according to Dr. Lava via the source code. And this would suggest not only was there going to be a Pokemon Pink version alongside Pokemon Yellow as a companion title, but it seems like most likely it would have been either Clefairy or Jigglypuff as the mascot. Now, I'm inclined to believe it was going to be Clefairy because Clefairy was originally going to be the mascot of the franchise, and there's actually a lot of other stuff that in this leak that lines up with stuff we already knew about. So, and I'll get into more of that later, but this is something that lines up with the idea that we already knew, that Clefairy was originally going to be the mascot of the franchise. And so that, combined with stuff we'll get into in a minute, I kind of inclined to believe that. But then there's also a case for Jigglypuff. And the reason why is because also in this source code, there are several audio files that are found that are actually the Japanese cries for various Pokemon from the Japanese version of the Pokemon anime, which suggests, much like Pokemon Yellow was sort of an anime-based interpretation of Pokemon Red and Blue, where it took a lot more inspiration from the anime, it seems like they were going to do that for Pokemon Pink as well, where they were going to have a dual anime release. So, like, you had your Red and Blue that were the base games, and then they were going to do 2 more games that were more so based on the anime in Red and Pink. But they obviously didn't include any of those cries into even Pokemon Yellow because because Pikachu is the only one that ends up with its actual anime cry. And that's probably due to the fact that it's on the Game Boy, and to even fit those files in the cartridge, you got to absolutely just destroy them. So it was probably a good move on their part. But yeah, this is why Jigglypuff has a case for it to be made as well, because with it looking like this was supposed to be an anime interpretation type of thing, like Pokemon Yellow is, that absolutely screams Jigglypuff, because Jigglypuff is a super iconic Pokemon in the Pokemon anime. Way more than Clefairy is. So Clefairy kind of has the history and background of Pokemon itself advocating for it, but Jigglypuff has the anime-based evidence vying for it. And regardless of which one it was, it's really fascinating that this could have happened. I mean, it basically would have been a Pokemon Yellow version just starting with Clefairy or Jigglypuff instead, like we saw with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which maybe that's why we got... I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but when you think about it, that could be why we got 2 versions of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, because Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are sort of remakes, like by and large, I should say, remakes of Pokemon Yellow. So why would you make a remake of one game into 2 games. Well, obviously, folks at Game Freak knew that at one point it was going to be 2, so they did 2, and it was kind of like maybe like a hidden reference to the folks at Game Freak, an internal homage to Pokemon Pink. So, like, things kind of come together a little more and make more sense now that we have this information, which is really, really cool. Let's see. So, as far as the further information goes, like I said, depending on what ends up happening, I might make a follow-up, like a video or something surrounding the information, like surrounding it specifically, or the information that it shows off or whatever, because this stuff's really interesting, but it is an evolving situation, and so I kind of just want to wait and see what happens. I was kind of surprised that it didn't get on my radar sooner, because this happened on like Tuesday, I believe, Tuesday or Monday earlier in the week, and it didn't cross my radar until like late last night. I was just like in Facebook, and an article popped up about it. I was like, how did I not know about this? So people weren't talking about it nearly as much as you would think they would be, because it definitely would have crossed my radar if they had been. So yeah, I'm going to be personally waiting and just seeing what happens. But I definitely feel like eventually I'll discuss it in a full video on my channel as well. So keep an eye out for that. One more thing we should talk about, though, concerning is why it would have been canceled. And I have a couple ideas about it. First, like I said, it makes all the sense in the world that with the anime branding of Pokemon Yellow, that they would kind of want to release another game alongside of it, just because that's the dual release philosophy, and since it's got that flavor to it, it makes sense. But I would suspect that they ultimately canceled it for 2 reasons. One, because with a name like Pokemon Pink, that is going to vastly appeal to the female population as opposed to the male population, especially when you're talking about kids that you're targeting. So like you're kind of sacrificing your interested demographic a little bit, just by using pink as the like color of the game, because I mean, I absolutely know that if a Pokemon Pink version had come out when I was a kid, there is no way, even if I loved Pokemon to death, there is no way I was going to be caught with a pink freaking Game Boy cartridge with Jigglypuff as the mascot, or Clefairy as the mascot, no less, on the playground at school. There's no way that would have happened, and that's just my situation. But yeah, like that's a perfect example of like how much they would have like cannibalized their sales just with that simple decision. So I believe that's probably a big factor in why they kind of like decided against it. The other reason I would say is probably because they realized that they were like, maybe they realized that they were starting to like not milk Generation 1, but like oversaturated a little bit, because while in America we got 3 versions in Generation 1, like is standard for every Pokemon generation. You got Red, Blue, and then the enhanced Yellow version. In Japan, they started with Red and Green, and then they got Blue version, which was an enhanced version of Red and Green that had updates and sprites stuff done to it, and essentially it was your typical enhanced version, just without any of the like story changes or whatever. And then they got Yellow as well, that further enhanced stuff and gave them the story changes. So they got 4 versions of more or less the same game in Japan. And if they would have added Pokemon Pink, that would have been 5 different versions of what is basically the same game. And I think anyone can agree, without too many changes to like what's going on and the plot and the story and stuff, that is just that's just a little too much for one game, even by the Pokemon dual release philosophy. So I think that probably could have been a factor as to why they canceled it as well. And I don't know, like it's just like it makes all the sense in the world, but it's also like you anything that comes across in the world of Pokemon that's like cut content, you wish it wasn't cut because you kind of want to experience it for yourself. Like knowing there was a Pokemon Pink version in existence, I want to play that Pokemon Pink version. Like how in the heck would you have started off with a Jigglypuff or a Clefairy? Because they are not remotely starter Pokemon in any sense of the word. Even with a Pokemon like Eevee that was in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, yeah, not a starter Pokemon, but they have been known to be gift Pokemon in the past, so it's kind of like, it's not really like insane that Eevee could be a starter Pokemon, especially because Eevee was Blue's starter in Pokemon Yellow, so it's like, that makes all the sense in the world. With Clefairy and Jigglypuff, it's like, they're just kind of like out there, just run-of-the-mill type of Pokemon. Nothing's really too special about them for the most part in terms of the games. You don't even find them until you get to like Mount Moon area-ish. And so it would have been really interesting to see how they would have been played off as a starter Pokemon, or how you would have gone about obtaining them as a starter Pokemon. If it had been Jigglypuff that was the starter because of the whole anime situation, how would have, obviously its personality would have been reflected just like Pikachu's was in Yellow, so how would that have kind of played a factor in the game? Would we have some like drawing on your face shenanigans going on? Maybe, who knows? That would be really interesting. So like there are so many, like the more you think about it, there are so many factors of just different things that would have had to have been addressed or had to happen with a release of this game, that even though it was probably for the best that it got cut because of the reasons I mentioned, I would absolutely just love to know about. I really want to know how they would have pulled off this Pokemon Pink version, and I don't know, there's just a lot of logistics associated with it. Another one is that both Clefairy and Jigglypuff, they can both evolve once, and they both evolve with the use of I'm pretty sure Jigglypuff evolves with the Moonstone, if I'm not mistaken. It gets really hard when there's like 900 Pokemon, like even the Gen 1 ones, you sometimes guess yourself, because like it feels like to me, I should know this off the back of my hand, especially with a Pokemon like Jigglypuff, but seriously, there's like 900 Pokemon out there, and it's really hard to remember everything about them right off the top of your head. So sometimes stuff isn't as clear as it should be. And so, I mean, like, I know I'm a PokeTuber, but I gotta say, like, there's a line that has already been crossed and was crossed like 5 years ago in terms of like being an encyclopedia for this stuff. So forgive me. But yeah, I'm nearly certain that Jigglypuff evolves with a Moonstone, and obviously Clefairy does, being from the moon. So all those Pokemon, including Pikachu, evolve with stones, but Pikachu doesn't evolve like in Pokemon Yellow. It mocks the anime or imitates. There we go. It imitates the anime and Pikachu not wanting to evolve there. So how are you gonna like? That would have to mean that just like Let's Go Eevee can evolve in that game, Jigglypuff and Clefairy wouldn't be able to evolve. But like, what would be the storyline there? Because if you're following the anime, there's nothing in the anime that says that Jigglypuff and Clefairy can't evolve. So like, how would you have addressed that? Because you have to have it be fair, obviously. So maybe that's another reason why it was canceled, because there were just all of these logistical things that they really had to address but really didn't have an answer for, and so they kind of just decided this is going to be too confusing, this isn't going to be worth it. Maybe that's another reason. I very well could see that. I do also want to give a quick shout out before we continue to the tax defense group. Check them out. Like I said, they'll still help you out with your taxes because there's still time. 800-850-7973 is the number. Visit them online, taxdefensegroup.com as well. Check out Writer Junkie as well. Get that resume, help you get that dream job. 805-587-7966, and you can check them out at writerjunkie.com. But yeah, there's just so many like logistics and ripple effects that come from this that really make it an interesting discussion. And that's just with the limited information we have right now. I haven't even gotten into the other stuff I was going to talk about earlier. I just mentioned a few minutes ago that there were this stuff like with pink version being a thing and Clefairy being the mascot that lined up with what we already knew, because we have already known for a while that Clefairy was originally going to be the mascot. Another thing that lines up with what we already knew is that there was a lot of information for like English localization in the source code, and it revealed like beta names for a lot of Pokemon, like Cubone was originally going to be called Orphan, Clefairy was going to be called Aria because of its singing. That is actually something we already knew about. This is not new information, because there was a poster back in the day that started to circulate around the time of Red and Blue's release that actually had all the names of the Pokemon from this beta stage, and it had Orphan, it had Aria, it had all of those. So we've already actually known about these names for a while. It's not new information. And this kind of just sort of like I said, falls in line with that information, kind of just pieces the puzzle together a little more closely and gives us more of a bigger picture. So that while that stuff is really cool, it's something we've already known about. And that's kind of why I feel like a bigger deal isn't being made out about this. Hence why I didn't hear about it till like 3 days after it happened, and I'm a PokeTuber online researching Pokemon all day. Yeah, so like I just feel like it's a lot of this stuff that we know so far just kind of fits in with what we already knew. Hence, it's not like a groundbreaking like gold and silver beta demo leak where like 30 new Pokemon we've never seen before are shown off. But the fact that there was going to be a companion game, that is new information. That is exciting. I guess I should say that this is all more like, I would say it's more than a rumor, but as of this point, you technically would still have to classify it as not guaranteed, because we're going off the public perception to it. Dr. Lava, as I said earlier, he knows what he's doing. He knows his stuff. He thinks it's legit enough to post about it. So, like, based on that opinion, there's a good chance it's legit, but we kind of have to, once again, wait and see how this evolves before we make any definitive conclusions about it. So keep that in mind as I'm talking about this, but I am going to make the assumption that it is real, because it most likely is. And yeah, so the fact that there was going to be a companion game, that's really interesting. The additional Japanese anime cries, that's really interesting. And those are basically like the two new nuggets of information that we had no idea about prior to this. We already knew about the names. We already knew about the Clefairy being a mascot at one point. So it kind of just sort of bridges the gap, I guess, between information we already knew. But it's still immensely fascinating, as I said. And it kind of gets you thinking about other stuff too. Like, if Pokemon Pink version was a thing at one time and it got canceled, who's to say other Pokemon games haven't got canceled? Like, I actually made a video about this before, like several years ago, of names of Pokemon games that were legitimately trademarked and just never happened. There were things like Pokemon Water Blue was not there, but Pokemon Water Blue is another thing. I can come back around to that later. There were things like Pokemon, I believe Pokemon Brown was one of them, which is interesting because the whole Eevee thing. There was Pokemon Tourmaline and Moonstone. There was Pokemon Topaz, I believe. There were a bunch. There was like 8 of them. And it was really, really fascinating. These are all like, it's not fake in any way. Like, these are all names that have been trademarked by Game Freak and Nintendo, I believe, that were just never used. That doesn't necessarily mean that there was going to be a game there. Delta Emerald, that's another one. Delta Emerald is another one that was trademarked by Game Freak during when ORAS came out. And that doesn't mean there was going to for sure be a game there, because as I said with Pokemon Water Blue, that name, as far as we know, was never trademarked, but it was mentioned by Junichi Masuda. He was explaining in an interview why it was leaf green instead of a blue version, and he name dropped Water Blue as kind of an example in that, but like there was no evidence of like it being trademarked or actually being a thing. But now that we have evidence of Pokemon Pink most likely being a legit thing, it makes you wonder, like, could any of these other games have been Pokemon games at some point? Like, I remember talking in that video about there's a lot of, like, Pokemon, like Tourmaline and Moonstone, those are gemstones. Topaz, that's a gemstone, and that kind of falls in line with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald being gemstones as well. So it makes you think maybe those were the initial names for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald before they switched the names around to maybe something that rolled off the tongue a little bit better. Maybe they were separate games all their own that were going to be like in addition to it or something. Like, the possibilities are really endless, and those are just the ones we know about. So it really gets you thinking about like what else could be in the archives over there at Game Freak. I wish we did not have to learn about this stuff via leaks. While I do understand that it is like, I guess, like development information and confidential information, and they by no means have to share it with anyone, because I mean, it's their stuff, like they have a right to do what they want with it. At the same time, I feel like with Pokemon being as huge as it is, there is an obligation almost to let the fans know about some of this stuff, because it absolutely 100% deserves to be preserved and protected and recorded for time and all eternity. And it's kind of hard to do that when you're the only ones that know about it. Like, God forbid something happened to Game Freak at all, but if a meteor came down and just struck the Game Freak headquarters, I mean, like, do they have that backed up? Like, is it gone forever? Like, this is the kind of thing that needs to be preserved for all time. This stuff needs to be treated like gold, essentially. Because, and that might sound kind of crazy, but like, from a fan perspective, this stuff is absolute gold. This is the history of the biggest media franchise in the world. Think about that. And that's why it's important. This is specifically with this stuff we're talking about today, Pokemon Pink Generation 1, this is the history and the beginnings of the biggest media franchise of all time. Highest grossing media franchise ever. And something like that, every little crumb of information about the background and history of that particular thing, in this case Pokemon, that needs to be preserved. That is historically significant. It's historically significant in the Japanese sense. It's historically significant for America, because frickin' Arceus knows we've had our fair share of Pokemania here. And it's historically significant from a world perspective, not only because it's a worldwide phenomenon, but because Pokemon is like just universally recognizable and is that highest grossing series. So I just feel like this stuff really, really needs to be preserved, protected. I feel like a lot more should be made public than what has currently been made known. I think that Game Freak, like they did a couple years ago with revealing in an interview that Gorochu was a thing, and then they showed off a couple early beta designs from Generation 1 in the Satoshi Chijiri manga. Like, public intentional reveals like that, even though they don't have to be an everyday thing, I think should happen more often, because this stuff needs to be documented, it needs to be preserved. It's really, really important, even if you're not a Pokemon fan, because it's just kind of a part of literally the history of pop culture in a way, because as I said, Pokemon is so mainstream, and it is so significant to kind of like the growth of my generation in particular, and because of the phenomenons that it's brought on multiple times, it's just like, I think it's just historically significant in general. Like, it crosses the bridge from being video game historic to just being historic, and because of that, I feel like it needs to be preserved. And so hopefully I mean, hopefully we'll learn more about this stuff one way or another, even if it is leaks, but I would really like it if they just came out and told us some stuff so we could know about it, we could preserve it, and just be able to document more of Pokemon's history. It would be really cool. But with that being said, that basically wraps up all the time I've got here today. And so I just want to thank you guys so much for listening. I told you it was going to be an interesting episode. I had a blast talking about it. And if you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe or follow wherever you listen for more stuff like this every week. Next week, we definitely will be talking about the Twilight Wings episode because that'll be out on Tuesday the 21st, and we'll just discuss whatever's going on at that time as well. You never know with Pokemon. Anything could pop up between now and next Friday. So keep that in mind. Thank you all so much for listening to this one. Leave your thoughts in the comments below if you're listening on YouTube. And with that being said, I'll be back next week, and be sure to check me out on my channel, Hoops and Hip Hop, if you want more Pokemon content in the meantime. And so with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. I love you all, and I'll smell you guys later.